From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, where Test cricket is continuing for the men. The 100 competition is underway for men and women, which is very colourful. And just over the English Channel, the Olympics are getting underway in Paris. So this is a good time of year to be a sports fan in this part of the world.
Ali, you're beaming. It's Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney. And the reason I'm looking spectacled is because I've got an oyster in my eye. I had a cataract operation recently. So look, if it's disturbing to watch this person play around with his spectacles, making a spectacle of himself or whatever you like, it is hopefully only short term.
You look quite suave, Jim, for those watching us.
Yes, absolutely. This is Sunil Gupta for Akashvani New Delhi, and three bespectacled people talking about cricket and sport in general, always a good thing. It's very wet New Delhi. And of course, we're looking forward to the Sri Lanka series, not just because it's Gautam Gambhir's first series as coach, but also because we want to see how the new captains are going to perform. And of course, as you said, Ali, it's the Olympics on in Paris, and India hope to improve on their best ever tally of, hold your breath, 7 medals at Tokyo. Certainly more than 7, hopefully into double figures this time.
Well, let's see. We'll perhaps have our own inter-Olympic competition between Australia, India and England and see who comes out on top. Later on in the show, we are going to be talking about Gautam Gambhir, though, and that new era for India's men with him taking over the reins as new coach. But first on Stumped, well, it's a busy time for West Indies cricket. They recently co-hosted the Men's T20 World Cup. The men's test team are currently playing an away series against England, and the women's side are getting ready to play in October's T20 World Cup in Bangladesh. But off the pitch, how are they coping financially? And how reliant are they and other nations on the so-called Big Three, India, Australia and England? Well, the Chief Executive of West Indies Cricket, Johnny Grave, joined me for a chat for Stumped, and he began by reflecting on the co-hosting of the Men's T20 World Cup.
Hosting a men's event for the first time in 14 years, and a huge honour and privilege, and one where I think we can sit here now post-event and look back with an enormous sense of pride and satisfaction. I thought the way in which our government stepped up and further invested in the stuff, probably hadn't really had any meaningful capital investment since the 2007 Cricket World Cup that we hosted. Was fantastic. I think Barbados alone is the big investment that we've spoken about, which was $25 million US, 50 million Barbados dollars invested in complete refurbishment at Kensington Oval. And that, to a certain extent, was followed, albeit slightly less extent, in Arnos Vale St Vincent, that hasn't hosted international cricket for almost 10 years, as well as the Richard Stadium, Brian Lara Cricket Academy, Providence National Stadium in Guyana, and St Lucia as well, in terms of the Darren Sammy. So huge investment by the governments into those stadiums, which is a brilliant legacy for us. And actually to see, particularly in those evening games where West Indies were playing, the Caribbean fans come out and support in their numbers. A bit of a shame we didn't have one final big party in Antigua against South Africa. But again, a really, I thought, fitting final and, great end to the tournament with worthy winners in India.
Has the hosting of it been tempered in any way by the ICC's announcement now of a review into the delivery of the T20 World Cup? What's your understanding of the scope of that review? Because, of course, it was co-hosted between Cricket West Indies and a USA entity.
Yeah, look, it was the first time really this sort of co-hosting model is really taking hold, which we'll see a number of events over the next few years where it won't be 2 full members. So we've seen in the past with the likes of New Zealand and Australia sharing, but this is really when a full member and associate comes together. And obviously with the widely reported issues with USA Cricket, they weren't in a position to co-host with us. So that was always going to create a challenge. And so the ICC set up a separate company in T20 Inc. to run that side of the tournament. And as we got nearer and nearer the event, Cricket West Indies' involvement with the US Games became less and less. So the inquiry is really to do with the T20 USA Inc. side of the tournament, those 16 matches. And I guess just because of the way things unfolded, probably the 8 matches in New York and the temporary stadium in particular that was built in Nassau County. But from our perspective, we welcome it. We always think there are lessons to be learned for ICC and for all host countries, and to start this cycle with an inquiry that I think will be forward-looking. What lessons can be learned, not just from global events that the ICC will be hosting, but also the temporary stadium, because I think, when we look ahead at the LA Games, when we look at new markets, building these kind of temporary stadiums, drop-in wickets, there'll be lots of learnings, not just for the ICC and hosts, but for all members of the ICC, that hopefully the inquiry can sort of look into and come up with some recommendations that everyone can take on board.
I know after the momentous victory at the Gabba back in January, you were quite vocal and have been about the revenue share model and the downsides to that, and in particular the lack of income that comes from when the West Indies teams do tour overseas. But one quote that I remember you saying back, I think it was probably February, March time, you said, at the moment, everyone says world cricket needs a strong West Indies. But you said world cricket are doing everything they can at almost every level to make sure that West Indies cricket are never strong again, which struck me as a very powerful quote at that time. Has much happened between then and now that has shifted you in that view at all?
Well, I definitely think there's more conversations about it, which we obviously welcome. The fact that whilst there might not be necessarily any direct action, at least everyone seems more open to discussing and exploring a new way of looking at things that makes the smaller teams at international level more sustainable. I think that one of the big things that has changed under the current ICC leadership is that the fact that these men's events, which are not just about hosting, they are opportunities to really raise significant revenue, for them to have gone outside of the big three for the first time in 8 years. So whilst we and USA have hosted this most recent one, you're going to have Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Namibia, Zimbabwe host over the next 4 years, and including New Zealand and South Africa and Zimbabwe, other full members. That really does change sort of a third of the system, which at the time of making that quote was heavily stacked against those types of teams. So we fixed one element, which is when you can host men's events and the host board can keep millions and millions of dollars of revenue, that now will be shared much more equally amongst all the members and including those associates. But that bilateral cricket model is still very much stacked in favour of the biggest boards, or the boards that have low cost bases. And still, I guess the ICC revenue share model is still skewed massively towards the big three.
You've been travelling a bit, I know, Johnny, but in terms of the Test series in England, Lord's was obviously a very one-sided affair, but real signs of that fight back at Trent Bridge and Cavum Hodge's century. Have you had a sense of how that's been received back in the Caribbean?
Yeah, I certainly think for the first 4 days or 4.5 days of Nottingham, there was a real sense of regaining some pride after a very disappointing outing at Lord's. We were certainly underprepared, but nothing really we could do about that, with the IPL being played in April and May, and so many of our players involved in the T20 World Cup for us, and the back-to-back nature of all of those events. England probably, grown up playing in these conditions and had less players involved in the T20 World Cup and IPL, so probably had a slight advantage in that sense. But losing the toss at Lord's, playing in those conditions, Jimmy Anderson's last test, everything was kind of stacked against us there, albeit we all felt, the players themselves felt they should have done better. But we certainly rallied in Trent Bridge, but let ourselves down in one session or a crazy 40 minutes, really with the game set up and us looking like we could get in position to do what, again, we've done before. We did it in Bangladesh, scoring over 400 to win a series away from home. Obviously, we had a fantastic result in Brisbane. So we felt we had the confidence and track record of these players having at least done it before and gone a win. But the beauty of the World Test Championship means that there's no such thing as a dead rubber, and that the game at Edgbaston is another opportunity for us to do two things. I guess one, get the players to further learn the game in this country, which is a completely different sport, in our opinion, to playing in the Caribbean or other parts of the world. It gives us a chance to repair the brand in the eyes of the fans and the English public. But also we've got South Africa coming to the West Indies immediately afterwards for 2 test matches. So this is very much, 3 test matches against England, but part of 5 test matches pretty much on the bounce. So hopefully sets us up in that test mode to do well against South Africa at home when they come to the Caribbean to play tests in Trinidad and Guyana.
And from
being in the Caribbean during the Men's T20 World Cup. It was brilliant to see the fan engagement and those carnival atmospheres in the stands. If you cast your mind back to the Gabba Test match in February and the incredible feats of Shamar Joseph when he burst onto the scene, is it possible to say what the impact of, I guess, not only Shamar, but mainly Shamar for that final day performance? Has there been a Shamar Joseph effect, could you say?
I think there has been. I think that's one of the things that always surprises me, that despite not necessarily matches happening at prime time or matches being well attended, I don't think there were a huge amount of people even in the Gabba when Shamar bowled Australia out. But everyone was talking about it. Everyone knew it. Obviously, people are following on radio. People are following through mobile clips and through the internet. And certainly when Shamar came back to Guyana, there was almost a 3-day party where he was paraded around Georgetown and all the fans were able to show their love. But even everyone is still talking about it now as such a proud moment. And I think because of the way he performed, the fact that he was relatively unknown and come through, such a sort of untraditional pathway, the fact that his toe had been virtually broken the night before as well, to do that all and then to come out and, bowl the way he did, it was a fairy tale start, really, taking Steve Smith with his first wicket and then finishing in such style at the Gabba, that it really did. I said the other day that whilst West Indies doesn't bring necessarily any financial rewards to the game, it does bring some incredible stories and some amazing players, and I think Shamar sort of embodies that, really.
Well, that's the Chief Executive of West Indies Cricket, Johnny Grave, and a very informative chat that was too. Jim, I had to touch on the Gabba with him to try and understand just what impact that has had. And it was momentous for Shamar Joseph, but for all cricket fans around the world, you got that sense of sort of combined joy at watching that incredible performance and seeing that resurgence and what it meant for the region. It was pointed, he said, didn't he, that whilst West Indies cricket doesn't necessarily bring big financial rewards to the game, it does bring incredible stories and amazing players. And that is still important, isn't it, for the soul of the game?
My word, as we saw the other day with Hodge making that 100 in the Test match, which really for 3.5 days was very much a close contest. It was only at the back end of it when the West Indies had one of their unhappy collapses. And let's face it, they've got a mainly inexperienced batting lineup. There's not a lot of lengthy Test careers in those fellas. And on the fringe, you've got, as I mentioned to Brian Lara a few weeks ago, there's Shai Hope and Nicholas Pooran, who apparently don't want to play Test cricket. So you want to have all hands on deck when things are running for you. They had a brilliant, maybe one-off achievement at the Gabba, thanks to that extraordinary bowling performance from Shamar Joseph. But can they sustain that over a period of time? And certainly, as we heard in that chat with Johnny Grave, they were very much underprepared for the Test match played at Lord's. That didn't help their cause. But there are good signs there for them being a competitive and hungry team from the look of a lot of the cricket they played the other day. Oh, and they got a bit more to come. So let's hope that that's the case. But I don't think there's any doubt that the world of cricket will be sustained by the big three financially, unless we get franchises taking the game over to such an extent that Test cricket gets squeezed out completely. In another 10 years, maybe the 100 will be part of that too. That may well be the case for a lot of countries, and we'll only be left with the hardcore 4 or 6 teams at the top that'll be playing it. But at the moment, we've got to try and find a way, unlike most other sports, to manage the year and fit all these games in. And let's hope it can be sustained as an attractive event, which is certainly the case wherever India play.
Finally, on Stumped, India's men are entering a new era as Gautam Gambhir begins his role as head coach of the men's team this week, and he starts with the white ball series away to Sri Lanka. So, Sunil, what has the reaction been in India to his appointment?
Well, actually, it's been there for such a long time. We were talking about it at the World Cup time as well, that, Gautam Gambhir is coming. So I think it wasn't news when it was actually announced. But I think, if you look at his credentials, he has the credentials. There's no question. He's been an international cricketer for, well over a decade. He's been a World Cup winner twice with match-winning innings in the 2007 T20 and in the 2011 50-over World Cup, match-winning innings. And of course, he's coached and played for KKR. He's been their mentor in 2024 when they actually won the IPL as well. So he has the credentials. I think actually he will be a very different sort of person from Rahul Dravid because he has a bit of a fiery temper. We all know that. I think that's not a bad thing. I really don't think it's a bad thing because I think there are a lot of youngsters in the team that need a little bit of, putting not in order, but, just keeping their discipline going. Rahul Dravid had a very different way of doing it. I think with his mentorship of KKR, he would have learned a few things about how to deal with different types of people. I think that will hold him in good stead. And of course, he's been around, he's been playing cricket as well till, about 8 or 10 years ago. So it's not that he's been out of the game for such a long time. He's played with some of these players in the team. He's played with them across different IPL teams as well, not just Delhi, which is his Ranji Trophy team. And therefore, I think that he will be well accepted. I think he's made all the right noises so far. I think that's an important part of it. And he has the backing of the selection committee, Ajit Agarkar, fully behind him. And I think that I think it'll be good there. But as I said right in the beginning, people are going to be watching this tour. It's in Sri Lanka, for how it's going to pan out in terms of the not the verbals, but the optics. How is that going to be?
I mean, Jim, Dravid's shoes are pretty big ones to fill, aren't they?
Well, the one thing he can look forward to, even at this point, is that India are probably going to play in the WTC next year at Lords, and probably against Australia, and unless England buckle up their shoes and stop bowling 80 overs in a day,
That's the World
I can't
Test
see
Championship
anyone else.
final.
Yeah, that's right, the World Test Championship. But he's got new personnel. He's lost a few in the one days who've retired, principally Kohli and Rohit have given it away. So he's got to develop some leadership in the team and get that harmony right for what lies ahead. And there's a pretty big challenge, I would have thought, playing 5 Test matches in Australia. But then you think about the resilience of India a few years back when Kohli went home and they still won the series after being bowled out for 36 in Adelaide. So there's a bit of a core with this Indian side. And, of course, they've had quite a bit of success, which gives you confidence. And to my mind, in Bumrah, they have one of the great strike bowlers in the current game. He's a huge asset. So there are lots of positives about it. It's really just pulling it into line and getting some satisfying performance from players who really want to play at this level most of the time, because it's hard to concentrate on a tour here, a tour there, nipping off to the franchise, back to the IPL, and so it goes.
Player harmony, Sunil, is he going to have to call upon his political acumen for his rapport with Virat Kohli, say? I mean, they have had a tumultuous relationship in the past, but is that all in the past?
They're both Delhi boys. They both played for the Delhi Ranji Trophy team, so they know each other. And I think he said absolutely the right thing, Gautam Gambhir. He said all that's for TRPs, the IPL, your spirit is up and your blood is running fast and all that sort of thing. And you say a couple of words. But he said these things. He says he's a professional, I'm a professional, and he knows the value that Virat brings to the table. Virat has nothing more to prove, really. If you look at where he is in his career and what he's done, he doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. But I think that Gautam Gambhir will know the value that he brings to the team. And Virat, being a consummate professional, will not let those personal feelings spill out over into the field. What happens in the dressing room is a separate thing. I think he's now a bit into his Zen period, if you know what I mean, Virat Kohli. He won't let these things affect him. And as Jim so rightly said, Gautam Gambhir has got a couple of things to prove. So he's not going to stir the pot unnecessarily. He's not going to do that. And I think that having been a mentor to KKR again, with so many nationalities, so many of the young team actually in the team now, I think that is good sort of launching pad for him to being the coach. And he's played with Dravid, he's played with Shah. He knows these people. He would have got a few tips from them about people, about the players, what are their pluses and minuses, what makes them tick. All those things he would have actually gleaned. And I think personally, I think he'll make a pretty good coach. He really will.
Well, that is all we've got time for on this week's Stumped. My thanks to Jim Maxwell and to Sunil Gupta and to all of you for listening, and we'll speak to you again next week. Until then, bye for now.